After the Compromise of 1867, but especially during the period marking the millennium of the Hungarian conquest, numerous public statues and monuments were erected throughout the Carpathian Basin. Alongside the feverish pace of construction, restoration, and urban beautification, it lent prestige to a city when it erected a monument in its market square to a great native son or patron, or paid respectful tribute to the heroes who had sacrificed their lives for freedom. Following World War I, however, the systematic destruction, defacement, and disrespectful reinterpretation of Hungarian monuments began in the occupied territories, with many unique works of art falling victim to these acts. On the occasion of the 100th anniversary of the signing of the Treaty of Trianon, we present a selection of these works, organized into thematic groups. The tragic death of Queen Elizabeth on September 10, 1898, shocked the public. This woman, adored by the Hungarian people, played a significant role in dismantling the autocratic regime that followed the 1848-49 War of Independence, as well as in the subsequent acceptance of her husband, who had approved the bloody reprisals. Emerging from the shock that followed the devastating news, citizens of Hungarian towns and villages, as well as members of associations and clubs, immediately began organizing to honor the memory of the Hungarians' beloved queen in a fitting manner. A central call was also issued to establish memorial parks and to erect a monumental memorial plan for the capital, for which donations poured in from all parts of the country. However, at the local level, the first memorials were unveiled in the years following the tragic event. In many cases, busts of more modest size were unveiled, most of which were created by recasting a plaster model of an existing work in bronze. Particularly popular was the bust of Queen Elizabeth created by Louis Strobel and George Zala while she was still alive. Both sculptors depicted the queen as a young woman, wearing the gown and jewelry she had worn at her Hungarian coronation. Due to the steady stream of commissions, dozens of replicas of these two sculptures were produced and unveiled throughout the country. Those who, a generation or two from now, are fortunate enough to be among the younger generations of Kolozsvár, a city that will one day have a population of 100,000, and to marvel at our city's well-developed streets, metropolitan squares, and parks. That person will also witness how the growing number of tourists will find their own source of attraction not only in the recently erected imposing statue of Matthias and the exquisite statue of St. George, but also in the entire series of sculptures to be gradually erected. There is no doubt that statues lend the most attractive character to a city's streetscape. In this regard, a significant movement has also begun in Kolozsvár. The foundations for the Kossuth statue and the Liberty statue currently cost 16,000 coronas each. The fundraising campaigns launched for the Rákóczi Memorial and the Bocske statue have also already overcome their initial difficulties. So wrote the Opposition Daily in its April 6, 1908 issue. This vision of Transylvania's capital was written by a city councilman who wished to remain anonymous. Judging by the subject matter, he may well have been Stephen Kusko. The curator of the National Museum of Historical Relics in Kolozsvár was, in fact, an enthusiastic participant in every movement to erect memorials in the city and its surroundings. Unfortunately, the part of the city councilman's vision that envisioned statues of Bocske, Rákóczi, Kossuth, and Liberty in the squares of Kolozsvár did not come to fruition. The city council was, so to speak, much more cautious than that of Maris-Weserhel. Nevertheless, in the second half of the 19th century, mainly thanks to law professor Karol Haller, Kolozsvár became more beautiful and attractive. Although he was the mayor of the city for a short time, his name is also associated with the launch of several movements that served the development of the settlement, including the founding of the City Beautification Association or the realization of the promenade on the bank of the Kis Samos, dreamed up by Laszlo Kovári. About 13 hectares were landscaped, and promenades were created, with a skating lake at one end and the Summer Theatre, currently home to the Hungarian State Theatre and Opera, at the other. Opposite the park, on the other side of the river, on a rocky hill, stands the citadel built by the Habsburgs to bring order to the rebellious city. At its base, the district called Sankálja was later formed, a poor quarter with dwellings half carved into the rock and dotted with ramshackle hovels. The city fathers wanted to beautify the surroundings of the promenade, which was intended for the recreation of the citizens, by partially demolishing the slum, aesthetically harmonizing the two banks of the Samos. Therefore, the decree of Ignat Duranyi, Minister of Agriculture, dated November 19, 1898, on the planting of the Elisabeth memorial trees was a welcome opportunity for them. Thus, the arrangement of this part of the citadel was entirely dedicated to the memory of Queen Elizabeth. The City Beautification Association was once again headed by Carol Haller, who organized and directed the development of the memorial site. In order to provide financial support for the works, a ladies' committee was formed under the chairmanship of Mrs. Joseph Bolony, which covered the costs of the construction by collecting donations. At the same time, the Beautification Association expropriated the plots, demolished the buildings, and removed the dangerous, protruding rocks with blasting, thus creating the winding Elisabeth Promenade leading up the hillside. Memorial trees were planted along the path, and the plan was to erect the monument at its end. Stephen Cusco wrote about this in 1906. The statue of Queen Elizabeth was donated to the city of Kolozsvár by Mrs. Joseph Bolony of Najibalan. She acquired the statue from the sculptor-artist Straubel, which was approved by Franz Joseph. Louis Straubel made the statue models of the royal couple in 1896, while Queen Elizabeth was still alive. After that, in accordance with the custom of the time, the bronze bust could be ordered through the Hungarian Society of Applied Arts, which was produced in numbers according to demand. Straubel's creation was first erected in a public square in Miskolc in 1899, and a year later the city of Subotica also ordered a copy. The pedestal of the Kolozsvár copy was made based on the plans of local architect Louis Pakiai. The Hungarian Citizen of June 17, 1901, wrote about it as follows. The bronze bust of Queen Elizabeth stands on an artificial marble pedestal and is inserted into an architecturally stylish environment at the back. 2 steps lead up to the platform, and on both sides of the statue there are semicircular benches also made of artificial marble, where the public can rest while walking. The inauguration ceremony of the statue was set for Sunday, June 16, 1901. The local press had already published the event's script days before. Due to the narrow walkway that led up to the castle hill, and to protect the integrity of the newly planted shrubs, the number of participants was limited. Interested parties could only participate in the unveiling ceremony after paying an entrance fee of 1 crown. The Hungarian Citizen reports on this in its June 10, 1901 issue as follows. Many people have announced their presence for the celebration of the erection of the Elizabeth statue in the citadel. But even those who cannot come in person at least want to be present in spirit. The enthusiastic caretaker of the Pedophile statue in Fehergyeza, Countess Louise Haller, promised in her letter dated yesterday that she would send roses grown on the Fehergyeza plain for the unveiling, which sprang from the dust of the great heroes. The flower will have double the value on the memorial statue of the Hungarian queen. In the days preceding the unveiling ceremony, the city fathers looked toward the citadel with serious concern, as torrential, cloudburst-like rains had poured down on the city on several occasions, and the water cascading down from the rocks had washed away the newly constructed promenade in several places. The resulting damage to the road was successfully repaired, and the ceremony could be held in brilliant sunshine. On Sunday, June 16, 1901, the Elisabeth Promenade leading to the citadel was filled with ladies and gentlemen dressed in their finest clothes. Among the dignitaries attending the statue unveiling were Count Akos Beldi, Lord Lieutenant, Mayor Gazas Vaccina, and Joseph Ferenc, Unitarian bishop. At exactly 11 o'clock, the Sozet rang out in a performance by the Civic Choral Society. The ceremonial speech was delivered by Ministerial Councillor Karol Haller, President of the Beautification Society. At the end of his speech, the veil was removed from the statue. Following the laying of wreaths and the recitation of the poem entitled Altar on the Citadel, written for the occasion, Karol Haller handed the statue over to Mayor Gazas Vaccina, who spoke appreciatively of the Society President's work in creating the memorial site. Dr. Karol Haller, moved, thanked the mayor for his attention, declaring that in the work on the creations, the Society's secretary, Stephen Cusco, had also participated with enthusiastic zeal. Since in the memorial book edited by Stephen Cusco we can read, word for word, the report that appeared in the columns of Elensek, we assumed that the anonymous correspondent was none other than the secretary of the Beautification Society, who, incidentally, also reported on the unveiling of the Kossuth statue in Marisvaserhi for the readers of Elensek. Now the citizens of Kolozsvár, if they longed for a little walk and rest, could choose between the promenade and the Elisabeth Promenade, and in practice they had to make this choice, because the Samos, by virtue of the nature of rivers, forced everyone to make a decision. At the eastern approach to the citadel there was indeed a wooden, roofed footbridge called the Germans' Bridge, formerly used by the imperial soldiers living in the fortress when they wanted to get into the city quickly to discipline the rebellious Hungarians. But for those wishing to take a walk, using it would have meant a detour. Following the creation of the memorial site, it therefore became urgent to connect the promenade with the Elisabeth Promenade. The City Beautification Society solicited several proposals for the new bridge, and among these accepted the plan submitted by the Schlick Machine Factory in the capital for a single-span bridge 35 meters long and 1.5 meters wide. The new pedestrian bridge spanning the Kis Samos was opened to traffic on August 21, 1902, and as part of the memorial site, it was naturally named after Queen Elizabeth. Dr. Karol Haller asked the city to have the dilapidated area on the banks of the Sums, on both sides of the Elisabeth footbridge, which had been a favorite haunt of the pigs in the neighborhood, tidied up, fenced off, and turned into a park. This was done, and now, thanks to the bridge, Elisabeth Road and the citadel form a single whole with the promenade. In former times, barely 400 to 500 people visited the citadel each year. Now, since the connection was established, according to the 4 filler tickets sold, an average of 25 to 30,000 people come here each year for walks, recreation, and to admire the beauty of the city. Hardly any stranger passes through Kolozsvár who does not walk up here, and that is quite understandable, because it takes 5 minutes to cover the 400-meter distance, after which one can already view the city and countryside spread out below from a height of 50 meters. The memorial remained intact for less than 2 decades. Following the change of sovereignty, the work of Louis Strobel was removed from its pedestal. According to Louis Astalos, an excellent local historian familiar with the city, in 1940, following the Second Vienna Award, the monument was restored, only for the Romanian administration, re-established 4 years later, to remove Queen Elizabeth's statue once again. In the 1960s, the area around the citadel was significantly transformed. The poor settlement of Sankalja was completely eliminated. The walking paths were put in order, and continuous soil movements and landslides were countered by constructing a drainage system, thereby also protecting the apartment blocks built at the foot of the hill, while a hotel was built on top of the citadel in the early 1970s. The lack of maintenance and repairs, however, took its toll. The walking paths once again began to deteriorate, particularly the section where the remains of the pedestal of the Queen Elizabeth Memorial can still be found today. In the early 2010s, events surrounding the restoration of the Elisabeth statue in Kolozsvár became more active. This can or could best be documented through the pages of the Transylvanian, and especially the Kolozsvár-based Hungarian language online press. On the one hand, in 2012, a copy of Louis Straubel's statue was unveiled in the courtyard of the Kolozsvár Lutheran bishopric, modeled on the original preserved in Miskolc. On the other hand, even during the feverish preparations for the erection of the statue, a surprising situation arose. In July 2011, the Transylvanian Hungarian National Council initiated the restoration to its original location of a copy of the former bust of the legendary Austrian Empress and Hungarian Queen. A few weeks later, in an unexpected turn of events, the original Sissi statue, believed by everyone to have been stolen, was found. The work of art was accidentally discovered at the Kolozsvár Museum of Art by archaeologist Greg Balas, vice president of the Transylvanian Hungarian National Council. Louis Straubel's work of art survived communism in rather poor condition and even bears bullet marks, so its discovery essentially did not alter the plan of the Transylvanian Hungarian National Council.